So after I help somebody get their first BMX bike, they usually ask me, what trick should I learn first? And what I tell them is you need to learn bunny hops, you need to learn manuals, and you need to learn fakies. Those are the three most important beginner street tricks that kind of link to everything. And today we're going to talk a little bit about manuals. Not just manuals as a whole, because we have that really in-depth manual training video in bike school, but I wanted to talk about one specific issue that most people have with manuals, and that's going to be looping out. Let me tell you a story real quick. So I was just starting out, maybe it was within my first year or two of riding, and I was obviously trying to learn manuals because that's what you should do. That's one of the first tricks you should work on and get a basic understanding of, and I was doing that. We lived up kind of on a hill and Circle K was down at the bottom of the hill, and so my friends and I would meet up at my house after school and we'd ride our bikes down to Circle K, get something to drink, and then go cruise around and ride street, okay? And one thing I like to try to do was manual down the hill. And there's a certain point there, we're going really fast, and I thought I'm gonna manual along this sidewalk, and I pull back to manual, and I'm holding the manual, and I'm going, and then I'm going too far back, and I keep going, and I keep going. And I had to bail, okay? And the problem was I couldn't run fast enough to keep up with myself. And so I bailed, I jumped off, I took 2 steps, completely fell on the sidewalk, slid into a fence, and got cut up. It was terrible. And a lot of people have similar experiences, maybe not that extreme, but you loop out from a manual. You pull back, you try to manually, you loop out. It's a very confusing thing. And so I'm gonna just explain a little bit about why this is happening and some things that you can do to fix it. First, let's kind of break down how the manual works. Essentially, you're shifting your weight back over your back wheel to get your front wheel up, and that gets you in the manual. Once you're in the manual, you're constantly shifting your weight from right above the back wheel to a little bit behind the back wheel to adjust how high your front wheel is off the ground. Again, in the bike school video, we go super in depth on that, and that's not what we're covering in this video. But you just need to understand the concept, okay? Weight behind the wheel makes the front wheel go higher, weight closer to the back wheel makes the front wheel go lower, okay? And so with that basic physics, that's gonna tell you if you're looping out, it's because your weight is too far back. There are a few other things that can contribute to this. It's not all about how far back you are, because some of the other factors can include how tall the person is. How tall the person is will determine where they're at with their hip placement and where that weight is gonna go towards the balance point. Another important factor is how much you weigh. Heavier guys don't have to get as far back as smaller guys do. That's just because that weight is a lot more impactful a little bit below the back wheel than a smaller person has to be way behind the back wheel for their weight to actually have some kind of impact. Okay, and so think about those things. When you're thinking about if you're looping out, think about how tall you are. If you're a really short person, looping out is probably not your problem. But if you're a tall person and you're looping out, your hips are probably way too far back behind the wheel. You're gonna wanna be more gradual and more cautious when you initiate that manual. Because again, if you initiate it and just throw all your weight back so far, you're gonna loop out very quickly. Okay, so be a little bit more cautious when you're shifting your weight back if you're tall. If you're a heavier rider, same thing. You don't want your weight to be too far back if you're heavier because it has a bigger impact on your balance point. Be more cautious with it when you're initiating in that manual or when you're correcting for a front wheel that's coming down. Don't throw your weight back so far. Be more gradual. Throw it into it softly and keep that front wheel going up just a little bit instead of completely looping out. The other thing here could be your initiation, okay? So that first point is really just about understanding what you have going on with your weight, how your weight shift is happening, and where all of that's going. And so depending on your size and your height, that's going to impact how easy it is for you to loop out. But the other thing here is the initiation. When you're throwing your weight back to get into that manual, some people have a different approach. Some people are standing straight up and they lean back into it. And this doesn't put them in a very good spot to actually control the manual. There's a proper technique to getting into the manual and to make sure that when you do get into it and initiate it, you're in the perfect position to adjust your weight placement and keep that front wheel up, okay? And so think about that. Think about how you're initiating it. Make sure you're initiating it the right way and using the L-shape motion that we talk about in the bike school video. That's super important. And the last tip I can give you is to just be a little bit more methodical when you're practicing the manuals. And what I mean by that is if you loop out one time, don't just do that exact same thing over and over again. Really think about it. Say, hey, okay, I looped out, and this time I was pushing off with my heels, or I was pushing off with the balls of my feet when I initiated the manual. Let's try it all with my hips, or let's try it all with my arms. Like, let's try it a little bit differently so that I can change the outcome. Okay, I see so many people trying manuals, and it's like they do the same thing over and over and over, and I'm like, hey, you know, that's great, but you're probably going to get the same results. And so you've got to be conscious, and you've got to shift things a little bit. Think about, okay, well, I did this and I looped out. Now let me try to keep my arms extended. Let me try to pull my arms up. Whatever it may be, you've got to make small tweaks. And sometimes it's really hard to notice what tweak is going to be the difference of you not landing the trick and the difference of you landing the trick. And so that's why for our members, they can post those trick attempts and get feedback, and I can spot, hey, your arm's bent, like stop bending your arm. And that's really helpful too. So again, if you guys want to join and you want help with manuals, you want help with all your tricks, the link for that is in the description. It's a very affordable monthly price. But honestly, guys, if you guys just follow what I've talked about in this video, these 3 tips, you're going to be manualing much better within the first week, okay? So let's recap really fast. Understand your weight and your height and how that's going to affect your balance point. That's number 1, okay? Number 2, understand how you're initiating into the manual and make sure that you're doing that initiation the correct way. Number 3, make sure that you are changing things every so often. If a manual doesn't work out, make a small change here and there and see how that's going to affect the manual. Sometimes that small change is going to get you closer to locking into a manual. Sometimes it's going to get you a little bit farther away. Up here on the screen is a manual video that Nick and I did where we go a little bit more in depth about manuals. And if you're really on the manual kick, check that one out next.